We're still investigating Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution, but we're starting with Section 3, which is about the Senate. This is podcast number 9. It is unique to America, the Senate is. It is made up of by our founding fathers and is unlike any legislature ever before. If we were in England, it might be called the upper chamber, where this position is for a lifetime. It is held by dignitaries and is often hereditary, and held by lords and barons. In other countries, these offices are usually held by people of wealth and the aristocratic class. Here in America, we have our common people who are called to be in the Senate. I'd like to tell you a story about how I learned something about integrity as a child, because being a senator means you have to have integrity. When I was young, many years ago, before pesticides, butterflies traveled in flocks, like birds do. They were beautiful and graceful and inspiring to see. They would pick a tree or a ground area and they would all land, and they would lay eggs and then they would leave. Our old willow tree became one of those chosen trees for a flock of monarch butterflies. My brother was thrilled. His plan was to become an entomologist, a bug scientist. He built a large framed box with a hinged roof and screened walls. He carefully picked some willow branches laden with eggs and put them in the screen box. He then went on a monarch butterfly marathon to study and he hardly slept at all and hardly ate anything for 2 days. He calculated the day they would hatch, the food they would need to eat, and their cocoon date. We watched these eggs hatch into tiny little worms that became caterpillars. They moved by scooting up their middle and then tiptoeing their feet forward and then laying flat again and then doing it all over again. That's how they moved. They had ravishing appetites and they grew rapidly. We had to pick willow branches twice a day to feed them. As May ended, Boy Scout camp was planned and paid for. My brother realized camp was going to be at the same time as these now chubby, hairy caterpillars would be spinning their cocoons. He left for the week-long camp with my solemn oath that I would feed and care for his caterpillars. When I promised, I had every intentions of doing a great job of babysitting these caterpillars for my brother. I knew how much they meant to him, but I got lazy and forgot to feed them a few times, and then I even left the cage door open once. It was cocoon time, and they were on the move. My first awareness was the of this silent migration was the earth-shattering scream of my mother from the kitchen. These fuzzy creatures had left the cage, crossed the floor, headed up the ceiling, through the bathroom, and to the hall, and then into the kitchen. That's where my mother lost it. Using a ladder, my brother and sister and I gently used pieces of paper and scooped them up and returned these caterpillars to their box. The next day, they started spinning cocoons. My brother had entrusted me with his priceless endeavor, and I hadn't done my best to keep my word to him. I knew it, and I knew he would hear about the escapades. I felt bad, but I still had to pay the consequences of losing his trust. Oh, yes, he was mad at me and never trusted me again with one of his projects. My family saw my lack of integrity, too. I was forgiven, but when 3 butterflies hatched in the living room a month later, conversations came back to my ill-kept promises. I learned a lot about having enough integrity to be responsible and to keep promises that summer. When you commit to something, you don't let even the little things in your care crawl away from your watchful eye. This is something that is so important when we think of men that we are electing as our senators. We need men that we can trust, and you can only trust people who have integrity. In the U.S. Senate, it was originally written in the Constitution they were to be elected by popular vote out of the House of Representatives. That decreased the number in the House of Representatives. In other words, it took a lot of people away from the House to fill the seats of the Senate, and that meant a few left in the House had more power on their shoulders. In 1913, the 17th Amendment was passed, stating the senators were to be elected from their states by the people. This has left the House with more numbers and less power on individual shoulders. Hamilton once said, "A man should have power in his private life to make decisions for his gain. As a senator, he is not an agent for the state from which he is elected, but he is an agent from the Union. He is bound to perform services necessary for the good of the whole through his state, even though his state could condemn them." This was the reason to have the Senate elected from the House of Representatives to begin with, so that they didn't feel that they had to do what the people in their state said because they were the people that elected them. They were supposed to just have been chosen as some of the elite from the House of Representatives to represent their state in the Senate. But that's not how it is nowadays. We elect our senators, two each for each state, to go into the Senate for us. They're elected every 6 years. All senators in all the states are not elected at the same time. 1/3 of the states elect their senators, and then and 2 years later, another third elects their senators, and 2 years later, another one elects their senators, so that we constantly, every 2 years, have a switchover of new senators, but we still have remaining in their aged and seasoned senators that can carry on the work that they had started to establish. Um, they They can manage our concerns with foreign nations, and they work with the executive branch with that a lot. And they could be forming plans that take time. And so there is no limits to how many times they could be reelected, so they can be back in there and can continue working on the work that they had been working on. Okay, you must be 30 years old to be a senator. Trust requires maturity, and that will help them guard against bribery. And so 30 years old was the age that was chosen. They have to be a citizen for 9 years, and they must be a citizen of the state they're elected from. I have a picture I want to show you. No, that's me. It's not going to go over to those pictures. Darn it. Okay, there's one. That's the monarch butterfly one. And we're through with that one. And we're through with the caterpillars ones. But this one is the Senate. Now, this is a picture of them being sworn in. And notice how they have their right arm to the square, and they say an oath and to be sworn in, which I'll read to you later. If you'll notice back up in here, there are people standing that are not raising their hands. See those people? Those are the pages that are there. And there is a man standing at the door right here. That is he is the, not coat of arms. What is he? The arms man in the Senate, and he guards the door. He keeps the peace among the senators, and he is the um, and he is he's the doorkeeper. He's the one who is the doorman, and he's the one who makes a run to the president and comes back with information for the Senate from the president. And so that's who that man is right there. And he does stand by the door. He is the doorkeeper. And these are pages that help him. They're under the doorkeeper. And the sergeant of arms is who I was thinking of. And he sits at one of these chairs up here at front. And then there's the person who is in charge of the sessions and calls them to order and keeps the order and says who can speak next. And like in the House, they have a speaker that they elect, but in the Senate, they do not. In the Senate, the vice president is the group leader, the vice president of the United States. And if he is away on a special duty with his responsibilities in the presidency, then they elect someone here in their group to preside over them. But the vice president is over the Senate. The Senate elect officials in their groups just like the House do. They act as judges for impeachment trials. The House can accuse people for impeachment, but the Senate are the judges. Senates can't call people to be impeached. They can only judge them. Okay. Let's take that down. I wanted to tell you another story. It's a story that goes along with impeachment. It's a story that took place in my life when I was a teenager. I was convinced my dad was crazy. He was going back on his word to us and breaking our hearts. He had promised us a vacation and we wanted it. Dad was in a lot of trouble with us and in my mother. Dad was so busy with work and church responsibilities, he never went on family trips. He was the one who suggested this vacation and to go to the reservoir and to a recreation area. We had planned on staying in nice accommodations and going boating and water skiing and fishing and hiking, horseback riding, and just having a great getaway. We were so enthusiastic. We'd planned and we had packed. All Dad had to do was just show up and drive the morning of the trip. The car was packed, our clothes for the morning were laid out for us, and we went to bed. We woke up to the smell of bacon and eggs. Mother wanted us to have a good meal to start the day. Dad was up, dressed, and out checking the water and oil in the car. Mother called us to breakfast. After the prayer on the food, we all sat chatting happily as Dad stopped us dead in our tracks and announced, "We are not going." "What?" we all acclaimed. And in unison, he was calm, quiet, and very much aware of our disappointment. Mother said, "Dad, I would like to talk to you in the bedroom right now." They left the table. Our parents never quarreled in front of us. We were no one's dummies, though. We knew Mother was on our side, and she was going to set Dad straight. A family council was called, and we sat around the table, and Dad explained to us what had happened to him while he was out checking the car in the driveway. My dad believed in prayer. We had family prayer each evening. He believed, as an answer to our prayer for protection, that he had been prompted by an inner voice that we should not go. At first, he felt he could not disappoint us, but the voice came back to him 3 times, and a strong feeling of urgency came over him. He would not go against that prompting. We would not be going on our trip. But as a backup plan, Mother had convinced him that he should take us to the lagoon. And it was a good thing because we were pretty close to being a lynch mob at that point. Lagoon was a local amusement park, and Mother supported him in his decision, and we all got ready and went to Lagoon for the day. It was a fun day, but only one day, and we had wanted 4 days. We stayed at Lagoon until midnight when it closed. We were all exhausted and dozing in and out of sleep on our way home until on the radio we heard a news bulletin. A reservoir had broken and flooded all the campground below it. That's right where we were going to stay. Many families were killed. We were all so grateful we had a father who prayed and listened to the Spirit and acted on that inner voice amid great conflict from us around him. I no longer thought my dad was crazy. A new respect for my parents was developing. I understood God can and will help parents, and it gave a new meaning to the commandment, honor thy father and mother, that thy days may be long upon the face of the earth. So, there are laws for order even in families. We couldn't impeach our dad, even though we wanted to at that time. This is a free and happy country. No man is greater as to be above the law. From the President of the United States to the poorest, meanest beggar, we must alike submit to the law. A quote from the Catechism of the Constitution was, "This is our glory. Let every American exult that he has no master but the law. Let him mark the man who would change this happy state of things as an enemy to his country, and let him remember that as soon as he himself breaks the law, he becomes himself the enemy." Now, in Article 1 of the Constitution, Section 3 and Part 7, it states that a person removed from office by impeachment proceedings may still be charged with and tried for a punishment for criminal violations that he had for the reason why he was being impeached. So being impeached isn't the worst of it and the end of it. He can be tried for criminal actions. Being impeached, like I said, we thought of wanting to impeach our dad, but I'm certainly glad we didn't. The next thing that has to do with the Senate is it talks about they must meet at least once a year, but they can meet more often, and they do nowadays. The next one is they must meet the first Monday in December. Power to alter that date is given to them, and when they cease to meet, they are to call it being adjourned. The House and the Senate must meet at the same time, and one cannot adjourn for longer than 3 days without the other. That's because they correspond back and forth. A lot of what they're doing has to do with the same things. Okay, let's see if we can change this to the picture of the house and get that there. There we go. The house, and see how many in the house we have all these representatives. House of Representatives. The Senate is only 2 per state. This is the House, and this is the gallery up here where people can view what's going on. This is where the speaker sits, and this is where committee chairmen sit. You can see the um, the doorkeeper. That is the House of Representatives. If some members are missing, a law can still be passed if there is a majority there. A majority is more than half in attendance, and less than half is called a minority. The House and the Senate must meet in the same building. Currently, it's the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C. That's where they meet. One side is Senate, one is the House. It's a huge building, and there's other huge buildings and offices around it as well. I wanted to show you a picture of it sliced. This is the Senate, and notice there's fewer seatings here, and there has to be a lot for the House. And this is where the House meets. Their offices, this is all on the second floor. Their offices are all on the first floor, the second floor, the third floor. It's they're just all over the place. There's what's it called? It's a sanctuary where they can go, a chapel area where they can go and pray or have some quiet meditation time. So anyway, that's what it looks like inside the Capitol building. Let's take that off. Each senator has one vote when they vote on laws. The vice president is not allowed to vote unless there's a tie. If there's a tie, then he breaks the tie. The next is they get to fix their own wages. Now, this may sound wrong, but this can't be avoided. The wage was fixed by law, and the laws come from Congress, so it just so happens Congress gets to fix their own wages. There are innumerable debates as to how the legislative branch should be organized after the Declaration of Independence. The Founding Fathers saw their own states were heated with discussions about this and were not too productive. And they wanted to provide an effective operation of Congress in the Constitution. So they gave specific powers to Congress. And I'm going to show you a list of these. Maybe what I'll do is do it this way. There we go. And the list is the power given to Congress. They're over taxes and spending and borrowing and regulating commerce, that's businesses, and rules for citizenship, bankruptcy, coin and value of money, rules for citizenship, standard weights and measures, punish counterfeiting, postal system, copyright and patent laws, federal courts, crime at high sea, declare war, raise and finance the armed forces, rules for armed forces, call up state militias, administer seat of government, and administer federal lands, and pass laws to implement the above. And these are what are given, the powers given from Congress. So, after looking at this list, I realize we really can't be blaming the president for anything bad that really happens, because it is the legislative branch that messes things up, because they're over all these things. So voting for the right people is what makes things better. The Senate is so important, and voting and getting people we can trust who have integrity into those places is what will make the difference of keeping our independence, our freedoms, and our liberties in our life for us. So I'm hoping that you will all think twice before you vote and that you will all vote this year. And I hoping that God will be with you until we meet again.